Welcome back, everyone, to Tailwind Talks, episode number 3. We have an extremely exciting episode for you today. As a reminder, my name is Brandon Smith. I'm our Vice President of Operations and Development. I've already been on episode 1, so I'm going to focus all our attention on our great guest today, Michael Sather. As a reminder, Tailwind Talks it's really our way of giving all of the employees at Tailwind and followers of Tailwind Group an inside look at what goes on at the company and the people that have formed the company, are continuing to grow the company and run the company, and just to provide a different perspective than maybe what you see on the website or on our social media or on the press releases. So more of an intimate look. And I am extremely excited today. We have an absolute all-star guest, Michael Sather, who is one of the 4 founders of Tailwind Group. So he's one of our owners and super actively involved in the business still today. And we're going to hear a lot about his background, his history, the growth of Tailwind, kind of the start of Tailwind, and what it's led to today. So thank you very much, Michael, for joining. I know that you have lots of other things going on, but all the listeners and we definitely appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Excited to be here, Brandon.
And he did say this is his first ever podcast that he's recorded. So
first ever.
He is a podcast listener, but never a participant. So he's going to do great. We're really excited. So Michael, just to start, we're going to kind of start with your background and history. But I want to break the ice. Since it's your first podcast, we gotta get a little loose and calm here. So I'm going to make you talk about a recent, very personal and awesome event that you had in your family. Your eldest daughter just got married about 2 weeks ago, and out in Colorado, beautiful wedding. Talk us through how that was as watching your first daughter get married and all the emotions that go with that.
Yeah, it was an amazing event. Actually, 21 days ago, to the day, I just called her this morning, checked in on her, and made sure everything is still going well, and she's elated. It was an amazing event, surrounded by a lot of great family and friends. Just to see, a couple that truly love each other, it was unbelievable. And obviously, as a father, it was a lot of emotion. It was a tough day. It was a full day of emotion, and we couldn't be happy for him. It went super well.
So you told me that you had a meeting with her in the morning and you kind of talked about everything leading up to that day, which was very personal, and a lot of tears were shed by both of you, and you kind of got that out of your system. Now I got to ask, no one warned you about what it was going to feel like when you actually walked her down the aisle?
Yeah, that was the hardest part. I thought that, I went for a walk with her at 8:30 in the morning. We found a quiet place and we just talked about, growing up and everything, and just really, talked her up and gave her encouragement. But walking down the aisle was by far the hardest thing ever. It was like, she was still a baby almost.
Yeah.
And giving her away. So,
well, I'll give you some grace. It was super sunny. I'm guessing the tears were from you. I think it was just because it was so sunny and you were squinting, right?
That's right.
Yeah. That's kind of what everyone saw.
It was super bright and windy. My eyes were definitely tearing up because it was super windy.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We're very excited for you and your family, and you've got 3 more kids, right? 3 more to go.
3 more to go. 2 more girls. So it's
you're going to be a pro.
Yeah.
Soon.
I don't know if I could ever be a pro at that, but it's one of the most rewarding experiences our family's experienced. So
awesome.
Super cool.
All right. So tell the listeners and just talk about pre-Tailwind Group. What did you do if there's a prior life, out of college, other business ventures you've done, kind of everything to know about Michael before the Tailwind Group story started.
Yeah. Most of my career before Tailwind was in banking. I always liked numbers. I liked spreadsheets and finance. That was my degree, finance, insurance, and real estate from St. Cloud State. So I started in banking, spent over 15 years in the banking industry, from various stages of being a teller, giving cash out at the window, and then finishing up as a lender. My last stint in banking was with Bridgewater Bank. It's a startup bank out of Bloomington, Minnesota. We provided financing for a lot of real estate companies, much like us. And that's really where the passion for real estate started and the idea. A lot of the customers we financed were doing housing at the University of Minnesota. So I learned how to structure deals that way, how to put deals together, and that's really where the passion started. So it was really banking, but I always had this entrepreneurial spirit to want to do something on my own. So I really didn't think I'd be in banking my entire life. So that's where Tailwind really started to come together, buying small duplexes or single family houses and renting them out with various partners. So my family, they had their own business. So that's really where I think the spark came from, to want to do something on our own.
Yeah, awesome. So played right into kind of how that flows into Tailwind. So at what point, because I believe when you met the other owners of Tailwind, you were still doing banking. At what point did you guys all get in a room, put your heads together and say, hey, let's do this thing as a team and let's really make something of this? And so, just talk us through what really led to the formation of Tailwind. Where did you meet Kyle and Reggie, and when did Landon come into the mix? And I'm just wondering, was there like a meeting in a room where you guys were just like a light bulb, like, why are we all doing this separately when we could all do it together?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact time. It really happened over time, over years. I met Kyle first, bought a couple houses from him, early 2005, I think it was. And then I met Landon. He was doing the leasing out of a van, renting out houses. And then... Hey,
the best of the best start out in a van at Rent MSU, right?
Yeah, it's the best way to do it, right? And then Reggie came into the picture. I think it was about 2008, and that was probably the year. And I think that was College Station Apartments where we bought that together. So 2008, and then after that is probably when we came down to this office, the basement of Rent MSU. And at the time, there was no finishes. It was all brick walls. It was dungy and more dingy than it is today. And we decided let's start to build this thing out and make an office out of it. And that was probably the start of it.
So yeah, kind of piecemeal together from 2005 to 2008, and 2008 was really, all right, let's make this a real thing. And when did you
kickoff year? Yeah.
And when did you officially exit the banking world and say, this is what I'm going to do full time?
I think it was 2010, 2011.
Okay.
Really phased out of it and committed to full-time Tailwind. So
tell some early stories, maybe first meeting Kyle, first house you bought from him, maybe the first deal that you guys did together. There's got to be a good story or two in there.
That's a good question. I actually don't remember the first meeting. It's so crazy because he was down here in Mankato and I was in Minneapolis, and we had realtors just connecting us. So we were just doing deals, and then all of a sudden it just took off. It was almost like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Because we never really talked about a business plan or a strategy or anything. We just connected.
So, with that, with your banking background and helping support a lot of real estate investors, developers build their business, as you went in to start to doing that yourself, what's the hardest part? What's the biggest challenge of starting a real estate company, a portfolio? I know there's so many, but your personal experience in starting out, what's the biggest challenges and hurdles that you have to work through to start from really nothing and, start to grow a real estate portfolio?
I think it's building reputation. You have to have a great reputation to be successful, right? And then secondly, it's probably just motivation and grit. I can remember the early days. It was a very small team. Just really the four of us initially. And you're doing everything, literally. getting the financing in place, finding the deals, doing the renovations, and then leasing them up. So there was no team to support anything. So there were times where it was hard to just see that we should keep doing this, right? I think it was self-motivation to really try to continue to find the way to do the next thing.
Yeah.
Because you're so small. I mean, there's no scale at that point. There's nothing to fall back on.
And when you speak to reputation, I assume it's reputation with everyone. It's with the banks that are financing your deals. Probably didn't have investors at that point, but as you grew larger,
a few small investors, but it's investors, it's the banks, it's the parties we're buying properties from, it's our residents,
mm-hmm.
it's the communities. So you're starting from scratch. So that was definitely a hurdle to convince people that we're legitimate.
Right. So at what point, maybe what year, what general time period, because I know they kind of start to blend together. At what point did the four of you really start talking about that this is going to be a real business? This is going to be a company that's going to employ full-time employees. We want to continue to grow it. And, maybe talk about the first, because the start was just single family homes. I think, College Station in Mankato was the first, call it a larger, multifamily purchase, and leading up to the events of, buying and developing the land for College Town, Mankato. At what point did it become a little, there's a lot of real estate investors that own a couple duplexes and homes, but at what point did it come to, this is going to be a real thing and a real business?
I would say around 2016, 2017, we had, right around that time period, probably done our first real outside investor deal. We worked with a group out of Minneapolis to bring some capital into College Town, one of the first developments here in Mankato. And that was about a $4 million capital raise. And we completed that project. And then I think Cedar Falls was probably the first out of Mankato property that we did. And that was also an investor raise, about $5 million. So then I think after that, 2016, 2017 is when we really saw we had something, right? Doing larger deals that had scale, more bedrooms and bigger size. And then it became clear that it was easier to manage a property, that has all these beds on one property with a great team on site that can run them. And we could run them remotely instead of having to be in Mankato. At one point in Mankato, we had nearly 2,500 bedrooms in town. So I think the other part of it was diversification. We didn't want to have any more beds in one certain market. We love Mankato, but it's just too much concentration to have in town. So I would say it was 2016, 2017 that it was clear that the strategy worked. We could produce strong returns. We could build a great team. We could really cast a vision and a strategy on properties. And that's where the start of it was. But I'd say truly when we started to think about building teams and the start of that was probably a few years after that, because we just had to add more bodies.
Yeah. No, I think it's so amazing. I mean, when we buy a new property now, I do an intro with the team and I show them a picture of when we built our office building across the street. We did a company outing and our entire company was standing on the patio and we took a picture. I think it was like 14 of us.
Yeah.
And that was Tailwind Group in its whole. And I started in 2014. So that would have been Tailwind Group in its entirety, about 14 employees.
Yeah.
And, we're going to talk a lot about today in a bit, but I mean, really realistically, did you ever imagine and believe that from that 2010 to 16 to what it is today, going from just the four of you to maybe 6 or 7 employees to 10 to 15 employees, 375 employees today, 36 properties in 15 different states, almost 17,000 bedrooms under management. I mean, was there ever a conversation in the early days that, hey, we think we can get to that or we can do that? Or was it just, we're building the spaceship while it's in flight?
Believe it or not, I think we actually did put a 10-year plan to be $1 billion in assets, which is roughly, those numbers equate to that. Now, did I actually believe we could get there? I mean, probably not.
Well, I mean, it speaks to your guys.
And that was that was probably in 2018, 19.
Yeah.
So we're in 2024. I mean, we actually exceeded that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We said we could do it, but did I actually believe it? No.
Yeah. Well, I can speak to my, personal, I started in 2014, and Landon just talked to me about this vision you guys had. Like, you were looking at a deal in Iowa City and looking at a deal in East Lansing, and he's like, we think we can really do this like anywhere.
Yeah. And
there's going to be real jobs here someday. Not that those jobs weren't real, but I was making $10 an hour, and you don't live on that for too long. So I believed in that vision, and I think what you guys have been able to do, a lot of people can have that dream and vision, but for you guys to continue pressing forward is so amazing and inspirational. And at this point, it's like, I don't know, you can almost take it for granted, like, oh, this is what Tailwind Group is today, but God, had to have been so hard. I mean, to get there, a lot of pain and a lot of struggle, just building and reputation and finding the right people. So really an amazing story. I mean, every startup business has a really cool story, but I think for you four to come together, kind of all different walks of life, from aviation to finance to an economics undergrad degree, and build this vertically integrated real estate company is just such a cool story. So talk a little bit about, you mentioned 2016 was really the start of scaling the business and starting to look into expansion. So Quarter Cedar Falls, which we still own today, 8 years later, still kicking butt.
Yep.
Awesome property. Talk through the first two development type deals in student housing, which would have been East Lansing, Michigan, and Iowa City. What went into that? How did you find them? How did you formulate the vision for the redevelopment, the renovation? What all went into that?
Yeah, they probably happen to be two of our most significant redevelopments probably that we ever undertook. Iowa City was a project built in the late 60s, early 70s. It was tired. It was full of crime. So it came to us off market, I think, from a couple of brokers, and brought the opportunity. And we just saw a large site that needed a lot of love. I mean, it was really ugly. So then we sat down and got the whiteboard out and really planned out a strategy where we could maximize the potential of the site and remove some buildings and add density. So it really just, it took a lot of strategy and brainstorming with the team. At that time, it was the four of us mostly, and then just put the pieces together and really brought it all in place. East Lansing was a similar story. Local broker had brought it to us, built in the 60s, heavy value add, site work, roofs, reconfiguring units and bedrooms. So again, extremely extensive. I think, RC construction always, gives me, prods me after we did the deal. I put the budget together, and then they're like, where did the budget come from? And I'm like, well, this is what we need to do. And so they did their best to make it happen.
I still hear about that story today.
I just heard about it 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So it speaks to how we used to do budgets and how we do it today, which has changed.
I think
substantially.
We showed up to site and did a walkthrough, and they had kind of gotten the full scope. And I'll be making up the numbers, but the gap is real. You're like, well, yeah, we need to do this for about $9 million. And Robin or Chris is like, well, who made that budget? And you're like, well, I did. You're like, well, are you a contractor? Because it's going to cost like 13 or 14. And you're like, well, that's not going to work. And we still hear about that one. We've gotten quite a bit better at that. So.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. Continue to learn every day. The project was completed. It was probably a little over budget, but it came in. It was completed. great project. You
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time there. So
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there, but it was, I think we learned a lot, what to do and what not to do on both of those deals. And then, I think really like 2017, 2018, we were still doing development. We did the quarters at Ames, did the quarters at Vermilion. But that was when we really started to broaden the stroke of looking for acquisitions at the same time. And I should know the timeline, but I know 2018 did the Ohio State deal, did the Alabama deal, Bloomington, Indiana. I mean, now you're getting into some real legitimate Power 5, prestigious universities and conferences. And so, talk me through.
I think actually after East Lansing and Iowa City, we started to change our focus instead of on projects that needed so much to projects that didn't need quite as much.
Right.
And part of how you do that is a property that's 20 years old instead of 40 or 50 years old. So would we still do a deal that was older? Yeah, but I think we'd look at it with a different lens than we did previously.
Yeah.
So we started to refine really what the actual asset needed to be.
Yeah. So from the finance perspective and putting together the capital strategy and the lender strategy, what's the primary differences between a quarters Iowa City or East Lansing where, you're coming in with a $10 million, $20 million construction budget versus a higher acquisition price, a smaller capital improvement budget? How do you look at those deals differently, and how do you fine tune that to, everyone's looking for the right deal. So, in those early days, what were you looking for? What kind of opportunities were you looking for? Was it market driven? Was it more asset driven?
I think it was the same then as it is now, more opportunity driven, not market driven. Everybody always asks, I think, on whether it's on our LMS or OBS, what market you want to be in. I think that's always a hard question because we're really opportunity driven, not market driven. I think there's some markets that, we think are attractive to go to, but that's not really the driver. It's the opportunity. And I think that remains the same. I think we want to go into projects where there's a lot of room for improvement. That really speaks to what our actual, I would call our mission. Who do we care for? We want to improve something, not so the property looks better, but so we can provide something that is a better living arrangement for the residents, so that we can provide a better opportunity for those employees, that, they have a purpose in what they're doing instead of, on a site that's been neglected, it's tired, it hasn't had any attention. So I think that's really what drives, and it's always been in our being. I don't know that we've ever really called it out, because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Making it better from all facets for the resident, for the community, and for our employees. So I think that's really what it's always been. We just never named it.
Well, I think it's been named now because all the national brokers now, whenever they're like, "Hey, great value add deal," you're the value add guys.
I'd say
I think we
have definitely made a name,
and I think we wear that proudly. That's not every company in our industry strategy. They have different capital that wants different stuff, but we've really leaned into that. I think some of our most successful projects we've ever done were some of those pretty heavy lift, whether from the actual condition of the unit and the site to reputation from the prior management or the current resident base. We take some stuff with some hair on it, and that inherently has some risk, but we've really developed a great system to, flip and turn those things around in a hurry. And now it's like, well, send us more, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Just to wrap up, kind of talking about the history and origin and the evolution of Tailwind, any just insane or crazy story, whether trying to get a deal financed and really having to get creative, or when you four were just kind of doing everything on your own and run across a situation, it's like, what in the world are we going to do? And obviously one that is able to be shared. I'm sure there's some really crazy ones. But
there's a lot of ones I can't share.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll ask it back to you. What's your craziest one you can think of?
Well, I don't know. I've got a lot too, but my East Lansing experience was a lot. You know, I don't even know really what my role was when I was there, other than just, I mean, I think either Landon or Reggie just said, your job is to represent the owners. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I was like the property manager, leasing manager, construction manager, public relations, marketing, like everything there.
Everything.
Well, that site was so unique because, like you mentioned, built in the late 60s, it wasn't a student housing property. It was probably 80% conventional renters. And, you know, with our development strategy, we had to completely vacate buildings to do the unit reconfigurations, bring in new HVAC, all the stuff we wanted to do. So that was my first taste into, okay, I got to talk to these residents and convince them to relocate, or help convince them to relocate. And man, some of those residents were just unique. Not bad, but one story, we had an older lady living there. She had lived there since like 1972. I mean, it was her home. It wasn't an apartment. It was her home. And not a doctor, but pretty sure she had a hoarding complex based on, you could walk through her apartment in a little alley in between furniture and boxes stacked to the ceiling. She must have eaten out every day because her stove and her everything was completely covered. And I got some pictures. Well, moving her cost about $20,000 and took about 3 weeks. And I got in trouble for that quite a bit, for spending that much. And
I remember the moving trucks.
Oh, it was
just one after another.
It was ridiculous. And I've heard from the history now that, so we moved her into another apartment. She eventually moved out, but she moved into the neighboring complex where she had a sight line out of her window to her old apartment front door. So she's still kind of with us, but that was one. And then another was, I had this attorney who lived there with his family, and he just hated me.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't stand me. I don't think anyone's probably ever swore at me more than this guy. And I've told this story before, but Colleen Luter, our director of corporate operations, we hired her as the property manager at that property shortly after. And I was giving her a tour, and this guy was just mad about everything. Construction noise, and he had to move, and he didn't want to move, and kind of just mad at me and mad at everything. And while I was walking with Colleen, he was just on his patio having his morning cigarette, and he just freaked out, screamed at me, cussed at me, yelled at me, and I'm just like folding my arms, like listening, and Colleen's just standing there like, this is the job I'm taking, and I'm like, oh man, we're toast. Like,
there's no chance.
She's running.
She's gone.
So I don't know. I probably have like 10 of those from there, but a lot of unique and fun ones. But
yeah, I'd say East Lansing's right up there. I think we all learned a lot there.
Mm-hmm. About everything.
That's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Every piece of it. Construction.
Yeah.
People. Resident base. We learned a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else to add, just generally, that we maybe didn't cover about your history? Anything about, the start of Tailwind, the growth of Tailwind up to, we'll kind of break it like 2016 to 2018. Anything that we didn't cover that you think interesting or relevant for the listeners?
I think you covered it all.
Yeah, I figured that would be your answer. I'll keep probing though. We'll get there.
You keep trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Michael, we're going to take a little fun break here. We're going to play a game. We like to do a little contest and competitiveness at Tailwind. So the team has put together a game. It's called Name That Market, which 5 years ago, you would have been king. I don't know. I think I might have you now. So this will be fun. So Nicole is going to read 3 clues about a general market. I assume that where we have a property. And through those clues, you should be able to make a guess. Write it down on the whiteboard. We'll reveal at the same time. If you get it right and I get it wrong, you get 3 points. If we both get it right, we each get 1 point. If we both get it wrong, then there's a 4th clue, and then you get one final chance to get the point. And there's a little prize. I told them that you were a healthy snack eater. So we got some beef jerky and some nuts and some things like that.
All right.
If you can take me down.
Let's go.
And I'll share with you even if I win.
Okay.
All right. So you got a whiteboard on the side. Grab that. And we'll get going.
All right, you guys. Here's the first one. I'm going to read all 3 clues, and you have 30 seconds or less to write down what you think it is. Clue number 1 is one of the school's colors is gold. Number 2, this school is the only 4-year institution in the state. And number 3 is their athletic teams compete in the Mountain West Conference.
Is this a property we own or have owned?
It could be either. All right, let's reveal. Ding, ding, ding. You both got it. University of Wyoming.
You said Wyoming. That's technically a state, not a market.
Oh, true.
No, I'm just kidding.
No. You're good. All right.
Good work.
Good job, you two. Next one. Clue number 1. Their famous campus landmark is the Sample Gates. They host an annual bicycle race called the Little 500. And clue number 3 is they have won 5 NCAA basketball championships.
You got it.
You're
Nice. Good job. Yes, correct answer, Indiana University.
I actually had that on the first
IU.
one. You should have done like a tiered point. If you get it after 1 clue, you get more. But for next time.
I didn't think you guys would be that good.
Oh, come on.
All right, number 3. All right, clue number 1. The town is home to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. They are known for the term Go Pokes. The town is home to an annual music festival called Calf Fry.
Uh-oh. I see a blank page there.
I should know this one. All right, I got it.
That is correct, you guys. Oklahoma State University. All right. It looks like we have to go on to the tiebreaker one. So I hope that this won't get one of you guys. Maybe I'll just do 2 clues.
I don't think you're going to get us.
I'll be here all day.
Okay. Clue number 1. Their famous campus landmark is the Denny Chimes.
Ooh.
Clue number 2. They have the 7th largest college football stadium. Clue number 3. This school's mascot does not match their nickname. I'll do it again.
Denny Chimes.
Denny Chimes.
7th largest football stadium.
Yep.
And their mascot
Does not match their nickname.
Boy, oh boy.
You gotta make an answer.
Yeah,
30
I think I'm on
seconds,
the
bro.
clock.
Come on.
I'll give you the 4th clue.
Well, you
This-
don't have to. He got it.
I don't know if I have it.
Oh, let's see.
Well, let me throw a stab.
At least if you're wrong and I'm right, then I win.
Yeah, you both got it. That
Oh my
is
God.
so silly. University
Denny
of
is the
Alabama.
only, because their stadium is Denny Bryant Stadium. That's the only thing that I had a guess for. Oh yeah, their mascot's an elephant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yep.
I do have a 5th one.
Okay.
Do we need
let's
it?
go.
Let's do it. All right. This school is located in the Sunflower State. In the fictional show Ted Lasso, Ted coached college football here before moving to the UK.
Never
One
seen
of their
that show.
one of their school colors is yellow.
I don't even know what the Sunflower State is. That's so sad. What is the Sunflower State? Ted Lasso, never seen it. Don't know what the Sunflower State is. And what was the last one?
Their school color, one of them is yellow.
Boy.
All right, time's up.
You copied him.
I didn't see
You
it.
saw his answer.
I didn't.
We're gonna have to.
We're gonna give it to
we can do
Michael.
it
That's
fast.
fine.
Come on.
Yes,
He
Wichita
got,
State.
He got Alabama and Wichita way before I did.
Thank you.
Michael.
Congratulations on your win.
I'll share with you.
Thank you. Transitioning our conversation a bit more into Tailwind Group today. We spent a lot of time on the formation and the growth and, you know, some various projects that led to it. Really want to focus more on current day. So for you, you know, talking about your started in financing and kind of deal creation and things like that, you're still very actively involved in Tailwind day to day as one of the owners, which I think is awesome. So at this point, what does your day-to-day and your week-to-week look like? You know, where do you focus your time and energy? What are the things you're working on with the team for the business? And I know every week's going to be drastically different, but if you were to, you know, you're overseeing the investment side of the business and the finance side of the business. So what does that look like for someone that wouldn't know?
Yeah, I would say today I spend a vast majority of my time with people and thinking about strategy, building out the business. Whereas in the early days, it was more on deals and structure and projects, right? So what that means is a lot of coaching, a lot of one-on-one meetings, you know, working together with the investments team to build out strategy and how to, you know, run the department better, building out the department as we grow. That department specifically has grown significantly over the last 2 years. It was probably 4 a couple years ago, and now I think it's up to 9 or 10. It might be a couple more with the interns that we've added. Mm-hmm. So it's really grown a lot. Coaching them through the strategy, working with the leaders of that team, which would be Nick and Jamie, on how to coach them as well. So it's really shifted from me working on spreadsheets, which I was really bad at, honestly. Nick can probably attest, and he'd expose me that.
Well, he's exceptionally good too.
He's a master of Excel. So I had 2 tabs on my workbooks, and he's got like 20. So It might be too much, but he can work through it quickly and train the team. So I used to be an Excel guy. I used to spend a lot of time on the numbers, but now it's more team building, coaching, and working on myself too, because I wouldn't call myself a leader by design. So I spend a lot of time. Self-awareness is a big thing. And just I work with a mentor. That's a big part of my personal growth. So it's a growth curve for me, because being in banking, I knew the strategy and the deal side pretty well. So I've transitioned to more of a people focus.
So how has that transition been? Because, you know, I've known you for 10 years, and you and I hardly really talked probably the first few. Actually, I remember the first time I ever met you, I was sitting in that office over there, leasing the houses, and I knew of you because, you know, you were my boss and your name was on my paycheck, but I'd never met you. And you came down and didn't really introduce yourself, and you just sat in my chair and you just started grilling me about leasing. Like, is this house leased and how much rent? And I'm like, who is this guy? And then I found out later it was you, and I was like, oh, I might have blown that conversation for sure. But, you know, you did a lot of doing, and, you know, we talk a lot in our leadership stuff. Moving from a doer to a leader is such a hard transition. So, and I'll say you are a leader. Your leadership is just different now. You know, now you're a leader by coaching and trying to get everything that's in your brain into a consumable way for all these other people. But it seems like you've really embraced it, and it's rewarding, right? I mean, it's really rewarding to see it click with someone, you know, what you've been trying to say and what you just inherently know from 25 years of doing it. So how has that transition been? And, you know, is that what you really enjoy to do now?
I'll be honest, it was really hard. And it's still hard sometimes. As you mentioned, and I think this is just the nature of a startup business, have to do everything. And you're the only person or team, a small team, to do it. So you have to do it, and it has to be done for a long period of time to make it happen. So that's what happened. That was probably 10 to 15 years of my career, just being a relentless doer, right? Which probably portrayed itself to some others, like you experienced, as, you know, I'm a director, right? I'm a dictator, and
Dictator's a little
probably a little aggressive, but it was a directive leadership approach as opposed to the style that we train at Tailwind now, which is empowerment and engagement and training culture, which is significantly harder to accomplish. And I think for me personally, it's learning that. It's a new learning for me, to change how your brain's actually wired, how you actually think. So it's been a lot of changing how I think about things. And I think the best way that I train myself is, again, like we talked about earlier, it's about the people, right? It's not about the project or making, a lot of money or making it highly successful. I mean, obviously we need to be financially successful to make this all work, but it's focusing intunely on the people all the time, whether it's residents, employees, or investors. I mean, that's how I've done it. And it's been a challenge, but again, it's having a mentor, it's having a team, it's having a system and a coach. And that's really what we're doing at Tailwind.
Yeah.
I mean, you're experiencing it at the top. I mean, that's the leadership style that we're approaching, and we want that for everybody, all the way down.
So you've mentioned that a few times now, speaking to our employees, our residents, investors, and something we talk about that I think is important is it's really in that order, right? You invest and coach and put all your time into your employees first and foremost. Obviously most predominantly from the on-site level, you do that, they take care of your residents, and your residents fill your property, pay your rent, and that takes care of your investor thing. So, we try to really focus on that's how we do it and why we do it, and in that order. So, you talked about what you do on the investment side as far as deal sourcing and strategy, but you also play a big part in our investor side and capital side, which we had Bryce on last month. And, he's new into that role as kind of investor relations, and talk through the history of, Tailwind has a very unique investor base in our broader industry, in the fact that almost all of it is, we call it friends and family. Some would call it syndicated, but, not big institutional capital, international capital and things like that. So what role did you play in, starting to build those relationships? And, it's a lot to ask. You're asking people to trust us with your money, just like you'd put it into the stock market or a savings account or whatever else. And then how has that grown over time? How have you continued to develop that pipeline and continue to build those relationships? And what role do you, with Crystal, with Bryce, with others, play in that?
Yeah, it's all about reputation and relationships. And again, it goes back to the people thing, right? So we built a very wide network of friends and family, is what they're known as, and just kept expanding that referral base out. And that was based on our reputation and successful deals. Making a profit is obviously vital to grow an investor base. So we have to at least have that piece to be able to grow that. So we have successful projects. We provided returns to them, return their capital and returns, and then ask them to come back in. So there's about 600 investors in our friends and family network, and we continue to grow that base. We want to grow that base more because they align most closely with Tailwind's cultures, Tailwind's values. We are okay with some institutional capital, but we really like the friends and family network because it really works well with how we work. So continue to grow that base, continue to have great track record, and continue to be doing what we say, what we do.
And has it kind of been a snowball effect? I mean, I assume the early days of asking for money were a lot more challenging, and you spoke to track record. I mean, now you can show 10 successful full life cycle deal projects, and you have that. But you had to have had some resistance early on.
Yeah, it was more challenging earlier on, but it's just as challenging now. Earlier on, the raises were smaller, right? College Town was $4 million, Cedar Falls was $5 million. Today, the average deal capital size is 10 to 15 million. So it's 3 times larger,
Sure.
3 to 4 times larger than it was in the early days. So, and that's just on a deal by deal basis. And now we do anywhere from 4 to 6 deals a year. So in the early days, it was 2 to 3 deals a year. So
maybe.
Yeah. 1.
Yeah.
Some years were 1.
Yeah.
So it was harder because of track record.
Sure.
But now it's a volume issue.
Yeah.
Because you can only, ask an investor to do so much. If an investor's in 6, 7, 8 deals, and they do an average check of 150,000. That's a significant commitment from an average high net worth individual. So we have to expand that base.
Yeah.
We need new referrals, and we need to find new parties to help with that. Yeah. And we also do that by bringing in family offices and institutions into the mix, preferred equity. So we supplement, the friends and family raise by bringing other sources.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to have a wide, diverse investor base to make sure we can grow steadily.
Awesome. So you talked about, I get this question all the time, like, how do you guys pick properties you buy, the markets that you go into? And, you mentioned it's very opportunity driven. So fast forward, we've identified an opportunity. Talk through the high level basics of what are the key things that you're looking for when evaluating an opportunity? The university market, the MSA or community as a whole, the in-place financials, the potential to change. If your brain is, okay, I'm identifying or evaluating this opportunity, what are the key things that I'm looking for to make sure that it's the right opportunity and it's something we want to move forward with?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for me, it probably starts with the project, right? And does it have enough opportunity? And then it's market. Is the college seem like a growing market, and does it have opportunity to grow? And then it's the competition, right? Supply and demand. After we really get through those 3 barriers, I think that's when we start to decide how interested we are in pursuing. And then it's the next stages are, do we have capital available? Is there capital readily available and interested in opportunities, and debt, right? So banking, on the banking side, that's a major factor. On the capital side, that's a factor after we've decided that the market makes sense.
Cool. So you also kind of already dispelled this question, but I'm going to re-ask it anyway. What's your dream market? But I'll say it like this. Unlimited capital. The deal underwrites to 30% IRR. There's no risk. You just get a pick on the map.
Well, I'd say the University of Minnesota, just because it's my home.
Yeah, it is odd.
Home state.
It is odd.
We don't have anything in our own home state.
That is odd.
In a Power 4 conference.
Right.
So that'd be the University of Minnesota.
Good catch on the Power 4. That's a hard adjustment for me. It's
not Power 5 anymore.
Forever. Rest in peace to the Pac-12. Okay, we'll go with University of Minnesota. That's good. Just kind of to close out, Michael, it's been great to hear your story and more about Tailwind. And this could be a very long answer, and we could probably spend the whole hour on this, but just reflect over the last 20 years. What Tailwind started as, what it's become today, and what you look to for the future. What are you the most proud of as, someone who put a lot of risk on the line, put a lot of hard work into getting here, and now seeing it be such a rewarding career for hundreds of other people? What are you the most proud of as to what you and the team have done and what Tailwind has become?
Yeah, 20 years is a long time. Almost half of my life, half of my adult life for sure. So it's been really rewarding to start something that we had no idea that would be anything, right? I mean, I think in the early days we just saw it as buying real estate as a side opportunity, as a real estate investment, and we'd probably still do something else as a full-time job, which then jumped fast forward to 2015, and when we all really made a commitment to it and started hiring a team, and fast forward to maybe 2020, when I think that's generally the stage where the 4 of us decided that we never really spoke about this piece of the business, but us 4 principals can't do this, right? We need a leadership team. And that's where the idea started to come together of we need a leader, a president. Lane comes into the picture, and it's like, well, we need a team to support him that is not us. And you and Crystal and Tom, and starting to build that senior team out. So I think that was a critical stage in the company that really catapulted us to a new level, to have a team that really brought all our ideas and our founders ideas to create the organization and structure. So where we're really at as a company is in a stage of building out a better platform that could catapult us for a different level of growth. I'm not saying we're going to be 100,000 beds. That's not even on the radar. It's fun to be in this stage where we can help build out a platform we're able to have successful projects and produce, jobs for great employees. And they don't see them as jobs, I don't think. I mean, you go to a lot of our summits, our training sessions, OBS, LMS. I mean, you see people that are from all different parts of the country, and it's like their friends and their family. It's more like their family. So I think that's what I see as the biggest reward in having the opportunity to create a platform that is successful, that also has this amazing team that comes together every day, right? But then also we get to do and celebrate together and coach each other up, encourage each other. It's what we do every day, so we might as well enjoy it, right? I mean, it's a journey. It's not a destination. So that's the fun part.
I don't know if I could have answered that any better. That was just a perfect answer, and you should be really proud. I mean, you guys have done some incredible things, and I can speak for most people that we're extremely proud to work for you and work with you. And we think the future is, vast. It's not about chasing a bed count or an asset number. It's, continuing to grow our people and provide, greater opportunity for them. And if that comes at the hands of continuing to grow the portfolio, then, that's just a byproduct, which is great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I'll just say you crushed it for your first ever podcast. If you had any trepidation or nervousness, you did a great job.
Well, you're a great host. So.
Thank you. It's actually technically my first host. The first one was kind of a dual thing. I think people are really going to love hearing parts of your story that they maybe haven't heard before. That's one of the byproducts of growing to as large as we have is there's a lot of employees that haven't had a chance to meet you. You don't even get the opportunity to go to all the properties anymore every time. So I think they'll really enjoy hearing your story, and really thank you for coming on and providing all your background and expertise and just kind of a more intimate look on how Tailwind came to what it is today. So thanks for joining, and hope you'll come back soon.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Next, what we are going to do, we're going to transition. We have David Hughes as one of our rotating hosts. He's going to do a special segment with Zach Rubosky, who's our talent acquisition specialist. Very new to Tailwind, but one of the most beloved team members at Tailwind for all the amazing things that he helps us with and does. So I won't spoil any part of that interview. David and Zach are going to have a fun conversation, and I think you guys will enjoy it. So pass it over to David.
Thank you, Brandon. I am David Hughes. I'm here with Zach Rubosky from our talent acquisition department. And we're going to talk a little bit about your department, what you do, and really sink our teeth into that. So,
sounds good.
If you would, please introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Sure. So, Zach Rubosky, like you said, I worked at Tailwind for about 11 months now, almost a year. My position was newly created back about a year ago, as we just have been growing and the hiring needs have developed for Tailwind. So I previously worked at Shutterfly for about 3 years as a recruiter out of the Twin Cities, and then moved to New Ulm, so about 30 minutes from Mankato, and wanted something more local, and saw Tailwind, applied, interviewed with Miranda and Lane, and here I am.
And your previous experience at Shutterfly, how does that kind of translate? What are the differences? Is it about the same, or?
No. Shutterfly, we probably had 15 people in our recruiting department, wow. Where now it's just me, obviously. So very different in the projects and things I kind of get to be involved in, and obviously helping with hiring for just about all the full-time positions we had. Whereas before I was just operations and manufacturing for some certain cities and locations.
Sure. We were running some reporting earlier, looking at our phone system. And we ran a report for the year for the amount of time, amount of calls, and you'll be happy to know you're number 2
wow.
on the company leaderboard.
Great.
So you must be calling a lot of people.
Yeah, sometimes I have up to 8 interviews in a day. That's
sure.
Normally my max, and I'm pretty burnt out at the end. But
sure.
Yeah, and when we didn't have an admin for a little bit, I just get voicemails forwarded to me all day as people call back and
Sure.
don't use the extension. So
Well, can you tell us about, in your opinion, some of the standout perks or benefits of working at Tailwind? Those of us that work here and kind of have a feel for and understand the workplace culture. I'm curious how you can try to show prospective employees that, and especially maybe over a phone interview. Can you tell us a little bit about the standouts?
Sure. Yeah, I normally kind of open my conversations and just tell them about Tailwind, even if they're familiar. Just our growth and where we're at, and kind of our focus on mainly student housing, to give them just a feel for our style and kind of where we're at. I always wrap up the calls with like the true benefit conversations. So, when you're eligible, what we cover, time off, those types of things. So something Tailwind does where you're eligible 30 days after hire, like first of the month for benefits, which is a lot sooner than a lot of companies, people like that. And our PTO is pretty generous, I'd say, on the front end. So those are more things that people kind of maybe check a box on. But you're probably saying more like benefits of just being a Tailwind employee that maybe you can't see surface level or, listed on our website or something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I would say there, it's the career development and the growth opportunities. And, I see that a lot in my position. I think I looked this morning, we're at 33 internal promotions or changes for the year so far, across all of our sites, which not something I saw in my previous position. Tailwind does a really great job at that and giving people opportunities to have stretch projects, raise their hand to work on something, and just work in different areas to gain that experience, see where you like, what your focuses are, what you really enjoy, and maybe how that can tailor your career as you grow and develop. And, we've seen that in a lot of different ways. People going from property management to accounting to leasing and marketing to finance. You can really, I think Tailwind's unique in that we really value our internal employees, want to invest in them and allow them to grow in that sense.
Yeah.
And then I also tell people, like, if they're interviewing for a job here in Mankato, I really love, our office culture. It's very collaborative, everybody, and can really kind of connect in those different ways just because of how it's set up, and our leadership's here and really invested in you. And I think you don't see that. I know we're still smaller as a company, but getting larger and still have a lot of that kind of small company feel.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about kind of growth and advancement opportunities here in a second, but in your opinion, I mean, in these interviews, are people asking, we feel the people first culture that Tailwind has, does it seem to be important to those job seekers?
Yeah, I'd say maybe once a week I get a question like, tell me about your culture, and kind of hate that question just because it's like, what do you want from that? What are you kind of looking at? Because I think people see culture move a lot of different ways for companies. So I try to say, what I was just saying, and kind of show them our investment in our people. Definitely for like a younger demographic, I think for candidates, they're more interested in that.
Sure.
They want to enjoy what they're doing. They want to have fun day to day, as much as you can with the work that you do.
Absolutely.
So I definitely see it more on that side, and people just want to get as good of enough of a glimpse as they can of what their job could look like and kind of what the company focuses on. Yeah,
and we take a lot of pride in my opinion, in making it felt right from the beginning. We acquire properties and we bring on a large staff all at one time. Mm-hmm. That's important to us. We make it a point to always go out to dinner with everyone right away, and we try to make it very apparent from day one. So I hopefully that continues to just cascade and never change. You mentioned earlier about kind of growth opportunities within Tailwind, and you mentioned some of the folks that have had progressions, myself included, started as in property management as a property manager and now director of technology. Can you share more about the opportunities in learning and development and what systems Tailwind has in place for things like mentorship or career development?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's some more concrete structured things, specifically leasing and marketing. With our leasing managers, they have the Leading Edge program, really where they get to do some stretch assignments and projects to help them kind of progress in their careers and their experience, help other sites, things like that. And, a certain number selected for that kind of each year and really get that direct mentorship and development. And then as far as other areas, we encourage leadership and managers to have those one-on-one conversations and, regular cadences where you're talking about more than just your day-to-day projects and what's going on, but really, kind of learn about where you want to go with your career, what are things that you'd like to work on or areas of improvement that you see. And I've been, at least in my position, really impressed. Just you have an idea or, think we could try this or do this, and it's go for it, do it, do some research, bring it back, present on it, and maybe it'll happen now, maybe we can do a version of it. But I think those are areas where you really gain experience because it's doing things maybe outside of your normal day-to-day work.
Yeah.
So I've seen that in the HR department, but, know that's a part in other areas. And, I've talked with like the accounting team, and there's certain people that have interest in tax or I don't know much about accounting, but something like that. And it's like, yes, go develop this more. And as our company grows, if you're the subject matter expert, you have an interest, your position could morph into something like that as we grow, add new positions and have a need for those types of things.
Absolutely. Kind of goes into our, our core value of entrepreneurial and responsive, really. We want to stay nimble. We want to be able to adjust and change course if we find a better way of doing things. And I completely agree with you. Yeah.
And I think on that, we do our new hire like orientations every few weeks with new employees. And that's something when we talk about the core values, it's, you're bringing a new approach, new ideas to Tailwind. And we want to see that. We want you to be innovative. And if you have a better thought or new idea, bring it to the table and see how we can make it happen or, really use that to make things better at the site or just better as a process or function.
Absolutely. And now it's been a while since I've interviewed. I do have fond memories of my interview with one of the founders several years ago, 12 years ago. But can you tell us about the interview process today? What is the structure like? What is a typical interview process?
So for a full-time job specifically, those are the ones that I really partner with our hiring managers on. So apply on our website, or all of our jobs are really on Indeed, and I think that's where we find most of our candidates, Indeed or LinkedIn. But upon application, I try to get in there. I'm the one really reviewing candidates initially within the first few days and kind of reach out to those that look qualified, have some good experience within that first week. So if you were to move forward for a full-time position, very likely would talk to me, set up a phone interview. Normally they're about 30 minutes to talk about Tailwind Group. Like I said, kind of give them insight on the position, on the property if it's at the property level, and let them answer questions, let me answer questions for them so they can get a good enough glimpse at the position. And then I normally, hear about their background and experience, kind of go through their resume, and then go through maybe 2 or 3 questions of kind of the tell me about a time type things. So just to get some insight into what they've done, what they're doing there. And then we wrap up the call going through, some of the benefits, any questions they have, and then next steps in the process. And normally, if we are to move forward, I'll connect with the managers at that point, kind of send them my notes, and most of the time it'll be then an on-site interview with the hiring manager directly. Say it's a leasing manager, they'll meet with the corporate leasing manager as well. So kind of any auxiliary positions that relate to it. But we really try to keep it to 1 or 2 on-site interviews, get to see the property again, kind of meet with the team, get a feel for it, and then have our decisions from there.
Sure.
And then part-time, which is normally just our community assistants at the site level, the property managers handle that whole process and do it. I don't have as much involvement there.
Sure. Now, when it comes to interviewing, question I have, how often does the prospective hire come with questions? Do you like it when they come with questions? How often do you get, everything was answered in the first round?
Yeah, a lot of times people say no questions at the end, and it's not a red flag, but it is something where I'd like you don't know everything, at the end of that call. Sure. So even something like it is, people ask me, how long have you been here? Do you enjoy working or culture? Obviously people ask questions throughout too, and I like that. So it's a little more conversational than just I ask a question, you give me an answer type deal.
Yeah.
So I think maybe as positions get higher level or their manager type, most times they have good questions at the end.
Sure.
Where if it's something more entry level or maintenance, they kind of ask their questions at the beginning about, the HVAC system, things like that. So at the end, it's kind of like, got what I need and I feel good.
Sure.
But I'd say most do, and I would encourage it for people. It's good to ask questions, show you've thought about some things, and hopefully helps give you some clarity if the position's going to be good on their end. And they feel good about the company and things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because if it, of course, needs to be, mutually beneficial.
Right.
Right. We want them to love what they do as much as we want them to love it, and to really thrive at it. So,
and I tell managers, like when we do kind of our initial trainings with them, is we're evaluating them, but they're evaluating us too. And if we take a week to email them back, what's that say about us or say about you as a manager? What that could look like, if they got hired.
Sure.
So it's a two-way process for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could do an entire podcast on asking you for tricks and tips of interviewing. I'm sure nobody in this room has spent as much time interviewing as you have with prospects. So that's a fascinating subject as well. When it comes to finding an open position at Tailwind, can you tell me a little bit about that, or where should people go to find more information?
Yeah, so easy answer is our career site. Anything posted, part-time, full-time, goes there, and that's just on our website, careers tab. You can learn more about the culture, the benefits, and all that online as well. And then all of our jobs kind of pulled to like Indeed.com or LinkedIn, which is where I know a lot of job seekers just go. So that's where, again, we get a lot of that traffic. So those are all listed there as well. And then we work with our marketing team. They're on our, Instagram, Facebook sometimes if we highlight certain positions that are open. And then LinkedIn as well is a great place to kind of see if managers are sharing it, our employees share openings and opportunities at their site or just corporate level. So we have a good presence there. Shout out to our social media team, but good kind of partnership, and can learn more about people and about the company and the brand, I'd say, on those areas. And again, with current job seekers, people kind of want to see everything they can find about a company. So there's a lot of different content out there as well.
Sure. And I understand we're hiring for a variety of positions, so they should come check those pages, I suppose.
Yes. Yep. We got lots open in different locations, different cities, and
apply. Well, thank you, Zach. Very, very insightful. Thank you for being here. I think it's time we cut back over to Brandon and Michael. So right back to you guys.
Well, thank you to David and Zach for that great special segment. Very insightful, very cool to hear all that's going on in that department. And to the listeners, just want to wrap it up with Michael here and just say thank you for giving us a platform to tell more of our story, tell more of the Tailwind story. We've certainly enjoyed it, and we hope that this can be a continued thing into the future. If you have any suggestions as you're listening for people that you would want to see, topics that you want to hear more about, please email marketing@thetailwindgroup.com. We're open to any and all ideas, and we know there's lots of people that would be eager to be involved. So we've got lots of room in the future to try to do those things. But thanks for listening today. Hope you're having a great week as you're listening to this, and appreciate you giving us the time. Michael?
Thanks, guys.